Watch yourself.
At 6:58 a.m. on October 25, 1944, lookouts aboard the USS Samuel B. Roberts spotted 4 Japanese battleships emerging approximately 15 miles northwest as the destroyer escort steamed off Samar Island in the Philippines. The Roberts displaced 1,350 tons, full load around 1,145 tons, armed with 2 5-inch guns, and carried a crew of 224 sailors who had been together for exactly 5 months and 27 days since commissioning on April 28, 1944. Leading the enemy formation was the Yamato, the largest battleship ever built, displacing 72,000 tons and armed with 9 18.1-inch guns, capable of firing 3,200-pound shells up to 25 miles. Lieutenant Commander Robert W. Copeland picked up the intercom microphone and addressed his crew calmly about the dire situation. A large Japanese fleet had been sighted 15 miles away. 4 battleships, 8 cruisers, and multiple destroyers, all heading directly toward the American task force known as Taffy 3. Copeland informed them that this would be a fight against overwhelming odds from which survival could not be expected, but they would inflict as much damage as possible. The Japanese center force consisted of 23 warships, 4 battleships, including Yamato, Nagato, Kongo, and Haruna, 6 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, and 11 destroyers, with a combined tonnage exceeding 200,000 tons. Opposing them were Taffy 3's 6 escort carriers, designed primarily for anti-submarine warfare, screened by 3 destroyers and 4 destroyer escorts, a total of 13 small ships with roughly 25,000 tons combined. The Japanese force outweighed them by about 8 to 1. Admiral William F. Halsey, Jr. had taken the main American battleships north overnight to chase Japanese carriers, leaving Taffy 3 unprotected off Samar. American intelligence had reported the Japanese center force retreating after air attacks the previous day, but it was not retreating. Around 3:00 a.m., it had transited the San Bernardino Strait undetected and was now closing at 30 knots. The escort carriers could make only 18 knots maximum and could not escape. Up to that point in the Pacific War, 53 destroyer escorts had been commissioned, but none had ever engaged enemy battleships. Their doctrine focused on screening convoys against submarines, not charging surface fleets. In the prior 3 months, Japanese forces had sunk 4 American escort carriers, with a typical crew survival rate of around 40% in surface actions, over 1,200 sailors lost. At 7:05 a.m., Rear Admiral Clifton A.F. Sprague ordered his screen to attack. The 3 destroyers, USS Johnston, Howell, and Heermann, turned toward the enemy, followed by the 4 destroyer escorts, with Roberts last in line. They had mere minutes before Japanese guns opened fire. Below decks on Roberts, Chief Engineer Lieutenant Lloyd G. Trowbridge heard Copeland's announcement. Navy regulations limited the ship to 24 knots, with safety mechanisms preventing boilers from exceeding design limits. Trowbridge went to the main control panel and bypassed every safety system. His crew watched in silence, understanding the necessity. 24 knots would not suffice. At 7:16 a.m., Johnston opened fire first, her shells arcing toward the Japanese. The enemy responded immediately with 14-inch shells from battleships like Kongo, sending water columns hundreds of feet high as Johnston vanished into smoke. At 7:23 a.m., Roberts turned toward the enemy. Copeland ordered flank speed. Trowbridge's overrides pushed the ship to 28 knots, 4 knots over design. The vessel vibrated intensely, metal groaned, and steam pressure gauges entered the red zone. But no one hesitated. Speed meant survival. The Japanese fleet spanned 10 miles of ocean, with Yamato in the center. Heavy cruiser Chikuma led the right flank about 8 miles ahead, with Tone 2 miles behind. On the left, cruisers Haguro and Chokai closed on the carriers, screened by destroyers. Roberts needed to penetrate the screen, reach torpedo range, about 5,000 yards or 2.8 miles, fire her 3 Mark 15 torpedoes, capable of 46 knots at that distance, and escape. Closing meant enduring fire from ships that could accurately engage at 25,000 yards. For every mile advanced, the Japanese had 5 times the firing opportunity. At 7:32 a.m., shells fell around Roberts, 8-inch rounds from Chikuma, marked by green dye for spotting. Splashes towered over the masts. Copeland ordered zigzagging to disrupt enemy rangefinders. Gun Captain Lieutenant William Burton in the forward 5-inch mount led a crew that had trained extensively but never faced battleships. The gun could fire 15 rounds per minute, with 608 total rounds, 304 per gun, enough for about 20 minutes at full rate. Burton conserved where possible. His 10-man crew averaged 22 years old. Most had submarine experience, but this was different. At 7:38 a.m., Copeland announced a torpedo attack. Roberts closed to 7,000 yards from Chikuma, still too far, needing another 2,000 yards and minutes under fire. A single 8-inch hit could penetrate the thin hull and devastate compartments. At 7:40 a.m., reaching torpedo range, Copeland fired the 3 tubes from starboard. The torpedoes ran hot, straight, and normal, but all missed or failed to detonate. Crucially, Chikuma turned away sharply to evade, breaking her pursuit of the carriers for precious minutes. Time for the escorts to flee south. At 7:45 a.m., emerging from smoke, Roberts faced Chikuma, resuming course at 8,000 yards, too far for torpedoes. Copeland ordered the forward gun to fire. Burton's crew scored hits on Chikuma's superstructure, causing smoke and damage. By 7:52 a.m., Chikuma shifted fire to Roberts. Close shells peppered the hull with shrapnel, but the crew continued firing amid drenching splashes. Nearby, Johnston took heavy hits, slowing. Hole engaged Haguro, but suffered multiple strikes. By 8:03 a.m., Roberts' forward gun had fired most of its ammunition. At 8:07 a.m., Copeland shifted fire to Tone at 7,000 yards, threatening carrier Gambia Bay. Burton's gun disabled one of Tone's turrets. At 8:10 a.m., the forward gun exhausted its rounds, the barrel red-hot, mechanism failing. The aft gun, under gunner's mate 3rd Class Paul Henry Carr, had fired nearly all 325 rounds. At 8:15 a.m., 3 cruisers bracketed Roberts at closing ranges. At 8:20 a.m., an 8-inch shell from Chikuma hit amidships, passing through without detonating, but causing flooding and a list. Soon after, another detonated, killing and scalding crewmen, knocking a boiler offline, reducing speed. At 8:25 a.m., power failed in the aft mount. Carr's crew switched to manual operation, dropping rate to 6 to 7 rounds per minute amid extreme heat. At 8:30 a.m., a premature powder explosion destroyed the aft mount, killing and wounding most of the crew. Mortally wounded with his abdomen torn open, Carr clutched the last shell, attempting to load it despite the ruined breech. Crewmen pulled him away. He died minutes later, still focused on the gun. At 8:35 a.m., a 14-inch salvo struck the engine room, flooding it rapidly, killing more crew, leaving Roberts dead in the water. By 8:45 a.m., additional hits pounded the stationary ship. At 9:10 a.m., Copeland ordered abandoned ship. 89 men were dead or missing. 135 went into the water. Survivors clung to one remaining life raft, for 16, and floater nets amid fuel oil, wounds, and sharks. The battle ended around 9:45 a.m., when Admiral Takeo Kurita withdrew, misled into believing he faced a stronger force and suffering damage to several cruisers. Taffy 3 lost Roberts, Johnston, Hole, and carrier Gambia Bay, over 1,200 dead or missing. but saved the invasion fleet at Leyte, thwarting Japan's last major surface threat. Survivors endured 50 hours in the water. Dehydration, heat, sharks, and exposure claimed more lives. Copeland organized groups to maintain morale. Rescue came on October 27th. 120 from Roberts were saved initially, with high survival due to leadership. The Battle off Samar is regarded as one of the U.S. Navy's finest hours, with extraordinary gallantry against impossible odds. Taffy 3 earned a Presidential Unit citation, Copeland the Navy Cross, Carr the Silver Star. Later ships honored them: USS Copeland, FFG 25, USS Carr, FFG 52. In June 2022, Victor Vescovo's team located the wreck at 22,621 feet, 6,895 meters, the deepest shipwreck ever discovered, upright in two pieces, deeper than the Titanic. The last known survivor, Adrid Lenoir, passed away on March 20th, 2022, at age 97, just months before the wreck's discovery. This is the story of the destroyer escort that fought like a battleship, a tiny ship and crew that charged Yamato and refused to yield, even when hope was gone. Their courage helped turn the tide in the Pacific. On the late afternoon of 14th April 1988, the frigate USS Samuel B. Roberts, FFG 58, was fighting for her life after striking a deliberately laid Iranian moored contact mine in the central Arabian Gulf. As the fire raged seemingly out of control and the ship was slowly but inexorably sinking, crewmen who were battling to save their ship were seen to place their hand on the list of names on a bronze plaque, seemingly making a spiritual connection with crewmen on board the first USS Samuel B. Roberts, DE-413. Lost during the Battle off Samar, Philippines on October 25, 1944, DE-413 sacrificed herself in one of the most heroic actions in the entire history of the United States Navy. Simply put, the previous Samuel B. Roberts set an unmatched example of the Navy core values of honor, courage, and commitment that inspired the 1988 crew to one of the greatest damage control efforts, preventing their ship from sinking when every post-event computer model indicated FFG 58 should have gone down. Those actions also gave the ship their motto, "No higher honor," when, after the Battle of Samar, the skipper of DE-413, Lieutenant Commander Robert W. Copeland, extolled the valor of his crew in the face of such overwhelming odds, stating that there was no higher honor than to have the privilege to command such a crew. Following the fall of the Shah of Iran, a U.S. ally, to Ayatollah Khomeini's Islamic Revolution in 1979, the dictator of Iraq, Saddam Hussein, tried to take advantage of the chaos in Iran by launching an invasion in September 1980. The result was a years-long bloody stalemate in which Iraq resorted to the use of chemical weapons to stop Iranian human wave counterattacks. Hundreds of thousands of military personnel and civilians on both sides died in the seemingly endless fighting. As each side became more desperate to break the deadlock, the war expanded into the Arabian Gulf. Iraqi jets began attacking Iranian oil tankers in an effort to cripple Iran's economy and ability to sustain the war effort. With the small Iraqi navy and merchant fleet already bottled up by the superior Iranian navy and air force, the only option Iran had to retaliate was to strike neutral flag shipping in the Arabian Gulf. By 1987, the Arabian Gulf had become very dangerous as both sides conducted attacks against shipping with little regard for positive identification, culminating in the accidental Iraqi Exocet missile strike on the frigate USS Stark, FFG 31, in May 1987 that killed 37 sailors. The US did not support either side, although the US did agree to a Kuwaiti request to escort their tankers after they had been re-flagged under US flag, which was designated Operation Earnest Will. The Iranians viewed this as US intervention in the war and retaliated by having the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy resort to laying mines in the Arabian Gulf. In September 1987, US forces caught the Iranian ship Iran AJR red-handed in the act of laying mines and captured her.